So what type of withdrawal rate makes sense? Here's what Dave Ramsey had to say. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. So if you have a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. When you get to the website, go up to the top of the page. You'll see a question and answer tab. Click through there, and you can ask a question. If you need a little bit more time than just what we can do in emails, you're always welcome to schedule something on my calendar. And we'll take a few minutes extra there to figure out a good path for you to take or some advice, so whatever makes the most sense. So that's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. We really haven't talked that much about the market lately. It's been mostly like summer markets go, and that is a little bit of volatility here and there, but for most of all, just pretty quiet. And it's just kind of slowly gone up over the past 45 days or so. So it's smart, though, to look at what's really going on with the stock market. Because when the market seems stable, there's always another side of the story. And there's two things that you need to know about what is driving the market these days. If you look at the year-to-date return for the S&P 500, or we'll call that the stock market, it looks really pretty strong, somewhere between 10 and 15%. If you look at the 500 stocks that the S&P 500 is invested in, and you take out about 7 or so of those stocks, your return goes from double digits down to 3 to 4%. Said another way, the market is being driven literally by 5-6 stocks that are all considered AI stocks. So not necessarily a really healthy market. But you get this type of situation at the end of market cycles. And this is one of the things I've been telling you to be very, very careful about. We don't know when this bull market will end. And by calling it a bull market that's near the top is making a lot of assumptions. But you've definitely got to be ready for that. You've got to have that plan B sitting in the back of your toolbox, your investment toolbox, and be ready to implement if things start to get shaky. But so far, it hasn't. It's really surprised me. It hasn't done much. Now let's look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. If I were to give you 3 different rates, and you were to guess which one was the year-to-date growth rate, what would you say? If I said it was 4%, if I said it was 10%, if I said it was 15%, what would you say? Most people would pick, in fact, I was watching this on CNBC a little bit earlier, and the money manager who did this little questionnaire said most of the people said 10 or 15%. Hardly anybody said 4, but that's what the Dow Jones is up. It's only up roughly about 4% year to date. So you have this big difference in rates of return, but once again, all driven by a very small number of stocks. One of the signs that this bull market could be heading in to the very later innings of the game. The other thing that you want to look at is when markets are at close to their all-time highs, they are so very expensive. Stocks are considered a very expensive investment. And why that's important is because the only way to get the expensive price of stocks down to the average price of stocks, where it says, they are a good value now, would take some serious declines. Well, if you look at the stock market today, we are in the second most expensive stock market ever. 1999 being the most expensive. So once again, these are signs that just say be careful. Don't drink the Kool-Aid and assume that everything is just great because nothing is happening except just easy positive moves in the market. And we'll see. We'll see what this summer brings. Definitely, it'll be interesting to see what the elections bring down the road. Let's talk a little bit about growth rates because this is one of the most important concepts that you can get, and one that I want to talk even more about throughout our time ahead. Making sure that you're understanding what the growth rate means for your investments. In order to determine what retirement looks like for you, we need a specific set of information. First of all, we need to know, what do you think you'll need from the standpoint of spending on a month-to-month basis? So we can get a total expense number. The second thing is we need to figure out, if you grow your investments a certain rate, what rate will it have to earn to cover that spending in retirement? Pretty easy stuff, right? So you save a certain amount of money, you make a certain amount of money on average, and you get up there and it all works. So what you really want to be careful about, and I think that growth rate is the biggest driver when it comes to determining what kind of investing that you do, because the truth is, those who are very, very conservative, who would fall in what I call the safe money category, they have to make sure that if I'm only going to earn 4 or 5% on average, then what is my expectation for income when I get to that point at retirement? And you might be surprised because it is pretty low average. But there is something that is very important about that low average, which I'll talk in a minute. You're very familiar with, and I know probably everybody listening to me has heard of Dave Ramsey. Dave's got a syndicated radio show all over the country. He's probably the biggest guy or host of a financial talk show or radio show in the country. I'd probably put him number one. He's an incredible marketer and has some interesting things to say about what he believes about money. We all have our opinions, so that's neither here nor there. But there's one thing that he says that sparks debate in the financial circles, and it has to do with this growth rate. Recently on his popular show, Ramsey dismissed the common advice to withdraw only 4 to 5% of one's retirement savings annually, and he says as moronic. I even looked that word up, because I guess if I was being called a moron, I'd want to make sure, or moronic, I want to make sure what that is. It means very foolish or stupid. Interesting choice of words. And anyway, advocating instead for an 8% withdrawal rate. He argues that this rate, adjusted annually for inflation, can be sustained without eroding the principal balance. In some fairy tale lands, this is true. But I think that there's a lot more to the story than, and I bring this up not to criticize him or bring light to what he's saying. I do know that people listen to him, And I'm just offering you, as I always do, the other side of the story. It says, critics, however, find Ramsey's approach overly optimistic and potentially perilous for retirees. They point out that his strategy hinges on an unrealistic expectation of a 12% annual return once you take in a steady 4% inflation rate. Now, I must say that is I categorically, if I said that word right, disagree with a 4% steady inflation rate. One of the things that I think that you find in retirement is that everybody's got their own specific inflation rate of how they spend money. 4 is way on the high side. And if you are expecting a 12% annual return on investments, even on average, I think that you're misinformed. That is incredibly, well, I don't want to call it bad advice because it's it's my interpretation. But I think it's advice that you definitely need to look at the other side of the story and know that maybe that's not such good advice, or here are the pros and cons to that advice, and you kind of figure it out from there where you stand. But the S&P 500 has historically returned an average of 4.5% annually, or 6.6% after adjusting for inflation, casting doubt on the feasibility of consistently achieving a 12% return. I don't even know why this is getting press. It's just so unbelievably crazy. Let's talk about that and some other things on the other side of the break. This is Bob Brooks. We're up against a break. Stick around and be right back. Hi, this is Bob Brooks. What is the single most important verse on stewardship? Well, you can find that verse in 2 books, word for word, Matthew 6:24 and Luke 16:13. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Wow, what a powerful statement. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we talk stewardship and how to stay in a committed, surrendered stewardship relationship with God. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
Hi, I'm Jan Markell, host of Understanding the Times. We're very excited to be a part of Bible School Radio. I hope you will join me Saturday, 10 a.m. for cutting-edge guests and the latest information to help you discern the truth, even the inconvenient truth. We'll help you understand our times and contend for the faith. That's Understanding the Times, Saturday at 10 a.m. right here on Bible School Radio or anytime at olivetreeviews.org.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know that I do appreciate it. Listen, if you're not aware of it, we do have a podcast, and I podcast every program at the end of the day. So you can go check it out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We're on, as far as I know, we're on every major podcast platform. So go check it out. And that way you can listen to the program if you miss it. Or if that's just a better way for you to listen to information like we talk about on Prudent Money, then you can be a regular listener of the podcast. A lot of people do it, and I so very appreciate it. We're talking about Dave Ramsey and his assertion that 4 to 5% as a withdrawal rate is, as he says, moronic, and advocating instead that people should be able to count on an 8% return before inflation, 12% annual return, taking a steady 4% inflation rate into mind. The risks associated with an 8% withdrawal are significant, particularly if the market underperforms or if prolonged periods of high inflation occur during one's retirement years. The reliance on a portfolio comprised entirely of equities also exposes retirees to considerable market risk, which could be detrimental during economic downturns, as if they don't happen anymore, but they do. We'll skip that. Okay, so here's one of the biggest problems. You might be saying, well, let's back up and assess this for a second. You're saying that the market is returns on an average 10 to 11%, or has during as an average. You're saying that risk, although not 4%, inflation, although not 4%, maybe 2 to 3%. And you got to remember is that Social Security, for the most part, is changed for inflation every year going forward as well, and sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But the average, the assumption, you got to check the assumptions of what is happening. And the one thing that you got to believe as being true, and which I don't believe is true. In fact, history says it's not. That is something you got to be concerned about. And it's called sequence of event risk. And basically that says that you never, that you, as an investor, you'll always have the risk of running into a situation where when you need that money, you retire, you got to start taking the money out, that the market goes through a steep decline and really ruins that 8 to 12% return that you're supposed to be getting. It's just like if back in 1999, in 2000, the market, you had many people who rode that bull market up to the very top, which was in 2000, and the technology bubble burst. And the people that were retiring because they made so much money rode the bear market all the way down 2000, and dropped 49% at the bottom of 2002 and lost half or so of their savings, had to go back to work. And you see that this is the problem with just putting your portfolio on autopilot. Is that you don't know when you're going to need it, and you don't know when the next downturn's coming. And downturns are not going anyplace. Downturns still happen and should continue to happen. So small downturns you can probably handle. Big downturns can change everything. So you're looking at almost perfect assumptions that an average return, nothing goes wrong, and that risk on stocks are going to decline. Risk on stocks, I doubt are ever going to decline. That risk to some degree will always be there. So you got to keep that as a part of your reasoning about whether this is a good idea for you or not. Plus, you ask a question: why is a guy like Dave Ramsey make these tips that are very controversial? Get a lot of free press. Really has nothing to lose because people will forget if you predicted whatever you've predicted in the past. People have a tendency to forget. This shows that he is contrarian. I think contrarian in the wrong way, but that's just my opinion. less things are going to change about how the markets work. That is a failed strategy that only time will tell. So you just gotta be careful about. So what withdrawal rate do you use? What growth accumulation rate do you use? And really, they are two different things. If ideally, if you can get by on a 4 to 5% withdrawal rate, which some people have to have higher, I get that, but make it work with that. That is pretty much ideal. If you can plan for a lower rate of return or growth rate average when you're growing your money over time, and then when you get to retirement and you start taking money out, that you are maybe growing at 5 and 6% and on average, not trying to hit 8, 10, and 12 and that kind of thing. So just be conservative. Whether you are an aggressive investor or not, I would still suggest be conservative with what you think you're going to be taking out, because if you're wrong, you've got no wiggle room, and you've got no way to go back and fix it. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. One of the questions that I get from time to time, and I think it makes sense to go over throughout the year a couple times, is the question, will Social Security be around? And, it's hard to get a reasonable answer for that, because usually people are talking about the extremes, using scare tactics, saying, yeah, everything's going to run out in 2034. Well, that's true and it's not true. You have to look at it from how, first of all, you have to understand how Social Security is funded. It's funded from the combination of a trust fund and the combination of payroll taxes that come into the trust fund, and benefits are sent out of that. By 2034, and by the way, the trust fund supplements the payroll taxes to form enough money to pay the benefits. Well, by 2034, the trust fund will have run out of money. The payroll taxes are still coming in. If they adjusted everything to make it work, then you would be getting about 83% of your Social Security benefits are covered by payroll taxes. And, something to keep in mind is that it would really only take a small increase in payroll taxes to fund the Social Security system for decades to come. Now, it's going to run out of money once again, as it always does. But there is a solution, and I've seen a lot of studies on it. There are solutions. It's just politically unpopular right now to do the things that are going to be needed to do. Now, the question is, would you be okay if they increased your payroll taxes, if it helped solidify the Social Security system and solidified it that you would be getting it, that you could depend on it? You may think I'm crazy, but I would. It ends up being quite a bit of money. So keep that in mind when you worry about Social Security running out of money, or maybe not running out of money, but you are very, very, very conservative or don't even count it at all. I think depending on what age you are, if you're in your mid-40s and on up, I think you should count it in your planning. If you're below that, I think you should count maybe half of it in your planning to make sure you're not being overly optimistic. But it's definitely, I would say, what you'll see happen is maybe not this next term's president, but the president after that will probably be at because the longer they kick the can down the road, the bigger the problem becomes. And it really comes down to money, and it just seems like everything that the government's doing requires money that we don't have. That's what I don't understand, and I'll end with this, is that we send money all over the world, billions upon billions of dollars, and we don't take care of our Social Security system. It seems like it's misplaced money, priorities and values of taking care of taking care of our country first. But that's a whole nother debate. And what the politicians are doing. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Listen, if you have not signed up for the email newsletter list, sign up for it. That lets you know when I'm going to post a blog or when the podcast is posted for the day, so you can check that out. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Got a question for me? Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.